Hey guys, so I wanted to come on here and go over this article, even though it's a few years old, because it shows the psychology of what's really going on in white people's minds, specifically with regards to their whiteness. And quiet as it's kept, even though you have this one professor only saying this, the reality is a lot of them feel this way. They just disguise it with white nationalism and white pride, so-called white pride. But the reality is they can look at nature and see that there's no reason for them to have pride in their whiteness. They take pride in their whiteness not based on nature, but based on society, and the fact that society reinforces this myth of white supremacy by simply disenfranchising Black people. Like I said, as you look at it the same way you will look at it as the American Disabilities Act, which provides compensation to whites based on their whiteness, the way that America provides accommodations to disabled people based on their disability. And this is because they don't have a choice but to. They don't have a choice but to, because white people know that equally they cannot compete in society. They know that they were not created equal to anyone. They know that they were created inferior to everyone. And without that systemic benefit as a result of Black oppression, they already know there's some nothing ass bitches. That's just the reality of what it is. But it said a white Ivy League professor has taken to the pages of the Huffington Post to condemn her own race, declaring that she chose never to reproduce because her children would simply inherit white privilege. Now understand, this is what white people hate. White people hate, that's why they're publicizing this, even though it's one white person that's saying that they hate to be white, hate being white. That is enough for them. So what happens when a white person says they don't want to procreate because they don't like their whiteness and they don't like white supremacy? They double down on white supremacy so they can try to weed out and cognitively reverse every white person that would think this, because they're already dying out. Ali Michael, a professor at the University of Pennsylvania's Penn Graduate School of Education, was prompted to write by the Rachel Dolezal saga, in which the heads of Spokane's NAACP branch was revealed to be a white woman who simply identifies as Black and have assimilated into Black culture. Dolezal's aspirations to forsake whiteness and embrace a new race, Michael says, is actually a routine one among whites who are repulsed by the racism and privilege they see all around them. They may be, there's not tons of them who are repulsed by this, because there aren't tons of them doing anything about it. And we already know, because white people show all the time, that they don't have a problem standing against what they don't like. So if there's so many white people repulsed by racism and privilege that they see all around them, why are they not doing anything about it? Michael says that, like Dolezal, she has gone through an extensive phase of trying to eradicate her whiteness, or as she called it, whiteness, one so severe that she decided she didn't want to reproduce. I sometimes don't want to be white either, Michael says. There was a time in my 20s when everything I learned about the history of racism made me hate myself, my whiteness, my ancestors, and my descendants. I remember deciding that I couldn't have biological children because I didn't want to propagate my privilege biologically. Now, this is a real white hero. But I think it's interesting, though, because history in this country is taught in a manner to give white people self-esteem. It's not done or taught in a manner that would make white people hate their whiteness, because history is whitewashed in a way that shows you that white people had all of these beautiful accomplishments when they really didn't. They completely omit the 1,000 years of the Dark Ages, which is a significant portion of white history. And they focus primarily on Black people not existing until they were put in slavery by white people. Because from my perspective, I saw white people being shown as good, because they don't go into all of the demonic actions of what slavery was and what historic racism was. Even if they talk about segregation, they don't tell you that white people were constantly and consistently terrorizing Black people, skinning them and making leather products of it, making things that says, hit the nigger baby, cutting off dicks and hands and putting them in windows, routinely raping Black women, falsely accusing black men of rape and then lynching them just for fun while thousands of white people watch. They don't even teach those things. So that shows you how fragile their psyche is. Because only a little bit of showing the negativeness about white people, when in reality there's thousands of years that we could draw upon. But just that little piece of history that's actually tilted in favor of white people made her decide she hated whiteness. Just that little piece. Michaels described her efforts as virtually all-consuming. She lived with a black family for a time, shaved her head, and read exclusively black authors. She also lashed out at those who dared to be white without shame. I dislike my whiteness, but I dislike the whiteness of other white people more, she writes. I felt like the way to really end racism was to feel guilty for it and to make other white people feel guilty for it too. And also add to that, make them feel inconvenienced and uncomfortable by it. But making them feel guilty is, I do believe, the beginning phases. And black people can't even make them feel guilty, and neither can white people, because other black people will go up there and defend white people and say it wasn't bad, or it wasn't all white people, or don't make white people pay for what other white people did. But they'll sit around and talk about black on black crime all day, every day. They'll punish all black women for the actions of maybe one black woman on a day. They'll write off all black women because of one experience with a black person or with a black man. Women do it too. They'll do that all day, every day. But don't you dare seek to hold white people accountable or make them feel any type of way about what they do. Black people do this, white people do not. Michael has apparently mellowed out a little bit over time and says she now accepts the necessity of whites accepting their racial identity rather than taking a new one, but mostly because this is the best way for whites to feel adequately guilty. At the end of the day, we need white people to see that we are white, she says. When we recognize our own whiteness, we can account for our own portion, or 1/1,000,000th of responsibility for what white people have done throughout history. Actually, see, she's not even correct, because white people are to blame for every atrocity that has ever occurred in history, because they've either manipulated it, instigated it, implemented, or caused somebody else to do it, or put a black face on something that white people were doing. So you can actually conclude, if you look at history, you can actually conclude that white people are responsible for everything. I truly believe white people are responsible for everything. We can work with other white people to begin to challenge bias, ignorance, and colorblindness. We can use our privilege to confront the sources of that unfair favoring. Again, this also shows that white people know what they can do to get rid of racism. They simply aren't going to do it. They're not going to do it. It doesn't matter how many black people they lay up with, because just based on the fact that they can still lay up with black people despite having all this racist history and present behavior, that right there tells them they're superiors. Period. They can care less about what this one white woman is over here saying. They feel like that if she doesn't want to be white, that's on her, but they're relishing in the 360 benefits of their whiteness, because they're not getting consequences from anyone. Who's putting white people and giving white people a consequence? In fact, they don't even like it. They're so confident that their whiteness is not only loved by them, but everyone globally, that it's offensive to them, that you would even celebrate or try to acknowledge that there is some value to your blackness. Black people have allowed them to feel this way because black people have allowed them to go unchecked by and large. Now, how likely is it that they would feel superior even in the slightest, even socially, if black people weren't allowing them to? If black people weren't allowing them to get away with racism, if black people weren't advocating for their racism and defending them, if black people weren't attacking other black people, if black people weren't putting them on a pedestal, if black people weren't saying that these people, despite their history and present racist interaction, the terrorism towards black people, these are still their preference, how likely is it that white people, regardless of how many societal benefits they get, because black people simply wouldn't be allowing societal benefits if they valued it, how many white people would actually believe that they were superior in any possible way? This is why they attack me so aggressively, and this is why they also come to my channel and try to convince me that we're somehow all the same and we're equal and God made us the same. And that's because I promote, no, we're not the same, we're completely different. And if you go out in nature, nature is going to tell you whether white is superior or not. Nature is not confused. Nature doesn't care how many societal benefits white people give to white people. Nature still says not only is white inferior, it should not be here. The sun doesn't care whether they call it a terrorist. The sun is still going to shine, and it couldn't care less about whether white people are burning. The reality is the sun says if you're organic to nature, you wouldn't be burning. So if you're burning, that is on you. Black people allow white people to feel superior because they don't check them. Now, I personally couldn't care less about a white person thinking I'm racist. I don't care if they think my stuff is divisive. Oh, well, we should be divided. We are divided. We're divided because they made it divided, and that's because the only situations they can thrive in is division. I don't care about what white people think. I don't care about white people's feelings. I don't need white people's approval. Imagine if all black people were like that. Imagine if all black people were unapologetic and weren't going to coddle feelings. I go around, walking around on my phone, talking negatively about white people all the time to other black people. I couldn't care less. I couldn't care less if they don't like it. If they say something about it, they're going to get checked. But they're not even going to say anything about it because they're going to say the fact that she would even carry on with this conversation in front of me tells me that's not a black person that's going to care anything about my white tears, and I don't. I'm going to tell them to drown in a river of their white tears. It is not my job as a black person to help them to compensate for their struggle genes. And I don't understand why black people think it's their responsibility. It's not my responsibility to coddle a white person or shelter them from vocal or physical consequences for their actions that they should have been suffered from. It's not on me to do that. I don't have to sit up here and make you feel good about your whiteness. I don't have to do that. I'm not going to sit up here and ignore my love for black people just because your self-esteem is dependent on my self-hate and the self-hate of my community. I'm not going to cater to your need to see black people hating themselves. That is not my responsibility, and it's not black people's responsibility. And if black people collectively, even to the majority or even to a 50% degree, understood and realized that they don't have to do this. There are no laws that says that you have to attack other black people in favor of white people. So why are black people doing it? There are no laws that says that black people can't publicly show their love and support for blackness. So why are you doing it? There's no law that says black people need to promote interracial dating with white people, i.e. black genocide. Why are they doing it? There wasn't any law. No white people made Roland Martin do a panel of black people to attack Umar Johnson, who stated the obvious and said that black men need to commit to black women in order to produce black children because the black family is under attack. Nobody made them do that. They chose to. And the more they comply and agree with the system, the more they comply and agree with this unspoken requirement that you have to coddle white feelings, although nobody else is required to do that. White men are not required to make public declarations that they'll date all races of women. Asian men aren't required when they mention their desire to only employ and procreate with Asians. They're not required to give a disclaimer that they're willing to date white women too, even though they are. They're not required to do that because white validation isn't tied to Asian self-hatred. White validation isn't tied to Hispanic self-hate. It is tied to black self-hate. And the fact that black people are complying with that, that means you are problematic. This is on you, black people. It is not on them. They can request whatever they want to. You can choose to comply. There are certain things that they are in a way forcing black people to do. Divide against their people and coon out and advocate for whiteness is not one of them. In fact, if black people called them out on the spot whenever they try to trap them into saying something about another black person, how likely do you think it is that they would keep doing it? If every time they went to the Lil Waynes or the Lil Bootsy's or whoever and said, what do you think about this black person? If they would have said, hey, don't try to sit here and play me. I know you're trying to bait me into making a negative statement about another black person, and I'm not going to do it. And you are racist for doing that. And why are you trying to get me to talk about black on black crime when they're the whole community of white on white crime that you can be talking about? How many times do you think it would take them getting checked like that before they just stop asking? But the fact that you have the Tiffany Haddishes that will throw the Moniques under the bus. The fact that you have the Sheriff David Clarks who are willing to go on national television and tell blatant outright lies in order to make white people appear to be better and make them feel better while denigrating the people that he comes from. What do you think that does? Do you think that would really give white people a very accurate view of their whiteness? It would for sure make white people really see how white they actually are. If black people were showing love for their blackness unapologetically, not caring what white people said. I'm sure Asians have been called racist by white people. I'm sure Asians don't care. There was a person sitting there talking about data shows that Hispanics and black people are more racist. Put that comment on my video. You know what I did? I didn't go back and forth and say, oh no, white people person, we're not racist. We include everybody because I don't care if they think I'm racist. Think whatever you want to think. They're going to think that anyway. Why do I sit up here? Why would I sit up here and care about what a white person thinks? I couldn't care less. However, nobody cares about that but black people. Black people are the only ones who have to prove to white people and all other races of people that they're not racist. Black people have never done a racist thing in history. In fact, it would benefit black people to become racist, actually. It would benefit black people to become racist. And the thing of it is black people can just adopt self-love. And then the reality is they don't even have to think about anybody. So whether anybody, if you adopt self-love, you're not over there moving and letting other people dictate what you think about yourself and other people who look like you. They're not going to dictate what I think about them. It wouldn't matter if every single black person on this planet said that white people were superior. The fact that I know that they can't even survive in natural elements is going to tell me they're not. I would just think I'm the only sane person and everybody else is crazy. That's what I would think. And that's because you're not going to convince me that reality isn't what reality is. How is it that they're able to convince most black people, most people globally, that reality is not what it is? Reality says white is inferior. Reality says white should not exist on any level, whether it's organic or non-organic. It says it just shouldn't exist. That's what nature says. Nature says that whiteness is very toxic. Black people say white people is God. Whiteness is everything. Whiteness is something to be ascribed to. Whiteness means closer to God. And I don't care how many times on Supernatural they make the angels white or they make the most powerful angel's vessels a white man. An angel would never house itself in a struggle gene body. That's just the reality of what it is. And I don't even need to know the physical composition of angel DNA to know that it wouldn't be compatible with white DNA. Because if white DNA is not even compatible with the sun, how is it going to be compatible with a super celestial being that has to cross through the sun, implying that its entire makeup is probably equal parts energy from the sun? And you think they're going to house it in a white body? No, my brain is not going to sit up here and allow them to teach me some bullshit. I'll watch it for shits and giggles and say, okay, well, whatever. I like the Supernatural storyline, is entertaining. You're not about to convince me, white person, that somehow an angel would use you as a vessel. Not with all that struggle gene. Your body will combust the minute that the angel even got close to planet Earth. That's just the reality of what will be going on. But the thing of it is, black people could make white people have these thoughts if they just chose to love themselves. And you don't have to think about anything negative about a white person at all just to love yourself. Just love yourself. Just love yourself unapologetically. And I think that's what's going to be on a shirt. Actually, I'm about to make the Just Love Yourself Unapologetically shirts. And understand that these ones are coming and I will be wearing one out. Because I'm not going to sit here and let white people dictate how I feel. I can care about your white feelings, white person. Why are you even here? I don't even want you around me. But you guys let me know what you think. Thank you for your support. I'll see you in the next video.